Okay, today I'm going to share with you guys a very short article I wrote, and on my blog. I wrote this about a year and a half ago, and by short I mean it only goes to there. That's it. Um, about a couple years ago, some of us from our old gaming group were able to get back together to play some D&D. We met once or twice. I think we played twice, and we weren't able to continue because everyone's schedule was just it wasn't going to work. But we got to play, got to get back together. We got to get back together. We were able to get back together, and we were able to sit around and play a little bit, and it was fun because we got to sit around and talk about the games that we had played. So that was it was nice that we could do it. Unfortunately, like maybe half of us got together. It was me, Carl, Julie, Dan, Eric was the dungeon master, and think I don't think Bob came. Maybe Bob came too. I know you're saying, who are these people? You don't even know who they are. But I mentioned some of them in this short little article, but I didn't mention everybody. So I do want to mention some other people from our gaming group over the years, and we didn't all get together at all the time. There were some of us at one point. It was a certain group, and then others would come and join, and others would leave, and things. But in addition to the people I mentioned here in this article, I wanted to mention Carl. He I forget the character that he played originally in our main game that we played in the 80s, but a later game where we only had about four people playing and I was the DM, everybody decided to play two characters because we didn't want to play something that small. That's just how we were. And I had just gotten an article, I had just read an article in Dragon Magazine about a more realistic way to roll up your height and weight for your character. And it involved the rolling of 1 to 1,000. So three 10-sided dice, and you're rolling 1 to 1,000. This was supposed to be more realistic. Well, Carl decided, oh, I'm just going to roll and just say the highest number I get is what I rolled. And so he rolls and he goes 900, and I forget what it was, like 976. I'm like, you just rolled 900. He goes, yeah, look, right there. There's the three tens. Of course, he didn't say which one was the first die he's rolling, and I just let it go because, oh, what the heck. Liam ended up being about 7 feet tall. And again, I think Liam Condoyne is from literature that he got the name from. Pretty sure. And I think he was about 300 pounds. And he was a paladin. So it was hilarious. It was quite funny. Um, then there's Bob, who usually played a halfling thief. And I don't remember if that was the thief that he was playing when he became infamous for this little moment that I'm going to share with you. Um, at one point, his brother made up spells based on our names, kind of poking fun at us. Mine was Scott's Gullible DM spell. How once the spell was cast, I would basically agree to whatever they talked me into. I was very gullible as a dungeon master, apparently. It was really funny when he read it, though. But Bob's spell was called Bob's Invisible Corpse. And the way that came about was they were all in a cave, and Bob had died, and the party. I'm the DM, and the party goes back to town, and everyone's talking because we're back in town. So like, what are we gonna do? Da, 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 da. And Bob's just sitting there, quiet. And so if somebody goes, Bob, why are you not talking? And Bob says, because I'm not here. I'm back at the cave. No one brought me. You all left me there. And we're everybody started laughing. Like, do you think we didn't see you? It's like, nobody said they were taking me back to the cave, so I'm still. That's Bob. That was funny. Then there's Vicky, who joined us later on, and really liked Tim's magic user Crackerjack, and she decided after playing whatever she was playing, she wanted a magic user because she saw how powerful Cracker. And you're going to hear about Crackerjack in a second. So she rolled up a magic user, and there was this one point where, as a DM, when you have a lot of players, it's very hard to keep track of everything. Um, So she would say, I'm casting magic missile. And I'd say, okay. Or I wouldn't hear her. And she'd go, I'm casting magic missile. And then a minute later would go by and everything's happening. She goes, Scott, did you get that I'm casting magic missile? And I go, oh, yeah, yeah. And I would like mark it down. But then I'd forget because things are happening. And she must have said it 4 or 5 times. I'm casting magic missile. And I said, Vicky, next time, make sure you've got my attention. Make it a little louder so I can hear it because I'm only half hearing you. It was really funny. So that was it's funny. Also funny because there's a YouTube video that's done like with kind of CGI, I guess, and the guy goes, I want to cast magic missile. There's a video where it's very well known if in D&D, so you may have seen it. But we all thought of Vicky when we saw that video. It was quite funny. Then there's Eric, who was the dungeon master in the last game that we played a year and a half ago, who I don't mention here in the article. But he, at one point, his characters tended to be a little too powerful. He tended to overplay at times because he was very smart and he knew how to manipulate things. But he convinced me that I should let him play a druid monk. Totally illegal character. You can't be both a druid and a monk. But Eric said, why not? What's the big deal? I'm just going to be a druid and a monk. And I thought about it and I thought, well, that shouldn't be too bad. Oops. Yeah, it was bad. That character was nuts. Just nuts. But Eric was good at manipulation, not in a bad way, in a friendly way. He couldn't help himself. Why shouldn't he try to get what he wants? Everybody does that. Interesting guy, to be sure. Then there's, I mentioned Kathy here. Her sister's name was Mary. She had a fighter that, because of the treasure in some of these modules we play, Kathy ended up with like 10 magical weapons and over 50,000 gold pieces. And it was hilarious. We're all imagining this character walking around with this. It's like, where are you carrying this stuff? Oh, I've got it in, saddlebags on her horse or whatever. We always figured out a way to carry all this treasure. Quite hilarious. Then there was Dan and Eric. They joined us, another Eric, at one point. I don't remember the characters they played, but Dan's last name is Noone, spelled Noone. You'll see why I'm telling you that in a second. And Dan was the same age as me, same birthday. And at one point, I ended up being Dan's roommate. There were 3 of us all living together in an apartment. I said, what are the odds that you and I would meet, let alone live together? But because his name was Dan Noone, spelled Noone, when Star Trek changed from to boldly go where no man has gone before, because that's now politically incorrect, because, that's sexist, which is ridiculous. It's not sexist, but people think it is. So they said to where no one has gone before, to which Dan would say, to boldly go where only I've gone before. And that's just hilarious because I'm like, oh my God, that's perfect. No one's been there. We used to make fun of that Star Trek. No one's been there, so you're going where no one's been to. How come every time you go, somebody's there? What are you talking about? No one made no sense. But you can't say no man, so that's funny. And Eric was another interesting guy. He did try to run a game once as a DM, but I don't remember the character that he played. And I don't even know if that's everybody. We may have had a couple other players too. So this short little article is about that time when we got back together and reminisced and shared some of the ways. This is basically going to show you some of the crazy D&D that we played back in the 80s, because it is a little crazy. Okay, playing Dungeons & Dragons in the 1980s, memories. I'm going to try to do this without getting emotional. I'll just pause the video when I do. Some of us, not all, had finally gotten together after many years to play D&D again. Feelings of nostalgia came into several of our minds, and we couldn't help but reminisce about the gaming sessions some of us had together back in the day. We couldn't help but talk about John's campaign. John was our first dungeon master, who was a DM, and then he ended up not playing. I don't know what happened to him. With D&D, we never played with him again. We just played our own games. where we fought hill giants at around 4th to 5th level with giant slaying swords and gauntlets of ogre power, along with girdles of giant strength. Someone said we had Vorpal swords, but I don't remember the Vorpal swords, go figure, which gave us ridiculous strength that allowed us to kill a giant, usually with just 2 hits from our swords. We went through all 3 modules, fighting the hill giants, and then the frost giants in a winter setting where we all had rings of warmth, thus completely negating the effects of the cold, which was supposed to be part of the challenge of that module. And finally against the very powerful fire giants. But by the time we faced them, we were so incredibly powerful, partly thanks to Gary Gygax's ridiculous amounts of treasure and magic items that he placed in his modules, that killing fire giants was as easy as when we faced those hill giants. 2 hits usually killed them. But if it wasn't our weapons and strength that killed them, it was our magic, due to all the magical power that we had acquired just from going up levels, which we did fairly quickly, even though we were playing first edition AD&D. It was very hard to go up levels back then, but we did it pretty fast, considering how much experience we'd get from killing giants, let alone all their treasure. I'll remember those 3 modules, G1, G2, and G3, forever. Then there was my campaign, where another person named John played a ranger named Nephrin. I forget which fantasy novel he took that name from. I think the name was Nephrin de Tourneyville or something like that. Kathy played a cleric that she named Caiaphas, because why not? Nephrin and Caiaphas killed more giants and undead than I care to remember. I'm pretty sure he had a giant slaying sword, but her +4 Mace of Disruption just obliterated the undead to the point of absurdity. Then there's Dan. Dan also played a cleric that he named Mengele, and he had a guard dog that he named Hitler. We were all laughing at this point. And for whatever reason, I let Hitler go up levels and get more hit points. At one point, Hitler, the guard dog, got up to 7th level. I don't remember how many hit points he had. Everyone thought this was hilarious until one day Dan decided that he wanted Mengele to become evil and turn on the party and become their nemesis. I have no clue how he and I worked out all the details. That is, I don't remember how we did it. But one day he attacked them in a dungeon from up above in the darkness on a contraption that allowed him to fly through the air on a board using ropes and pulleys, and everyone went nuts. And as an aside, I think at one point John stood up and said, "You're going to die this time. You are not getting out of here alive." Something like that. It was really funny. Dan began the encounter by playing the music from the movie Superman, and that's when everybody went nuts because they knew it was him. Because at this point they knew he had gone evil and he had left the party, and they knew they were going to run into him at some point, but they didn't know when, and he waited. It was really funny. I think he played another character while this was happening. It was one of the most hilarious moments we ever had. Then there was Julie's Ninja, whose character's name I don't remember. It didn't take long for everyone to become quite sick of Julie's Ninja, which was a character that someone developed in an article in Dragon magazine. I'll put that at the bottom. So I let her play it because it sounded like it would be fun. But when she had an answer for everything, Julie's Ninja quickly became the stuff of legend. An annoying and absurd legend, but a legend nonetheless. The conversations would go something like this. Well, any other character would have died if that happened to them. Except Julie's Ninja, of course. No one could survive that. Well, no one but Julie's Ninja, etc., etc. She was poisoned? Nope, she could avoid it. She was hit by a magic spell? Nope, she could avoid that too. Physical attacks? She could dodge them almost every time. Traps? Avoided. It didn't matter what hit her. Julie's Ninja always had an ability that allowed her to almost always avoid it, no matter what it was. I have no clue how long we allowed her to play her invincible ninja. But the most famous character from that game had to be Tim's magic user, Crackerjack, which, by the way, in my book, the wizard in my book is named Jack. That's simply my homage to Crackerjack, to Tim. Okay, Tim got him all the way up to 12th level. No one had ever gotten a character from first level to 12th level. It was the longest anyone had survived in anyone's D&D game. Crackerjack did it all. He had high stats in every category, as we all did, but his were like the best. Because we rolled 4d6 multiple times for each ability score, because we're goofs. We just wanted powerful characters. See, we're typical. This is how you are when you play when you're like 18, 19. Crackerjack had a lot of hit points for a magic user. His constitution was a 16 or 17, and was very strong too, with a strength of 17 or 18. I forget exactly which one it was. He started out with 6 hit points at first level, and often rolled a 4 when he went up a level, giving him 6 more hit points. I didn't put that in the article, because he got lucky. He really did. He got lucky with his rolls, and he rolled them in front of us, so that was real. So even when he ran out of spells, he could still fight well with his powerful magic weapons. Crackerjack was, without a doubt, the most powerful character in the party. Well, except for Julie's ninja, of course. Okay. Even though our games were mostly hack and slash, those games were some of the most fun I ever had playing D&D. The memories of the awesome times we had being together, eating chips and pizza and drinking Coke or Mountain Dew, while fighting monsters with paper, pencil, and dice, would go on sometimes until 1 to 2 a.m. We even played all night a few times, but mostly Friday evenings and sometimes Saturdays, where we'd start around noon and play until at least midnight, if not later. We never wanted to stop playing, but when you start falling asleep, you kind of have no choice. So we'd either all crash in Dan and Julie's basement, or drive home in the middle of the night, and anxiously wait for the days to pass before we could finally play again, which was usually in a week. I wish I could travel back in time and relive those experiences with my friends. I miss all of them more than they know. I miss a lot of people more than they know. What I wouldn't give to be able to go back in time and do it all again. What I wouldn't give. And the ninja character was originally intended as an NPC. The article is from Best of Dragon Magazine, Volume 2, on page 16. That was published in 1981. The article was originally in Dragon Magazine issue number 16 from 1978. So that's the kind of a window into the crazy D&D that we played. I don't know how most people's games played. I don't know what a typical D&D game was. All I know is the games we played, and it was a blast. And it's all I wanted to do. There was no game like this in the world. This changed the world for all of us, and because there was no game like it. And the Satanic Panic was hilarious. At one point, Tim's mother, they're Catholic, wonderful woman. She was the only other woman I called mom. Was very concerned because I think they saw Mazes and Monsters. I think they saw the movie, and she wanted to know what we're doing down here. So Tim invited her to come sit with us and play. And she came down. She didn't sit with us. She just stood there and watched. And it didn't take long before she went back upstairs. And she realized that this is silly. They're just playing a fun game. And she was of course naturally concerned. Why shouldn't she be? Because she didn't know. I had a friend who kept accusing me of playing a devil game. You keep playing that devil game? I said, you keep saying that. Why don't you come play one time? And this is years later, and I'm married, and my wife and I go to visit him and his wife. They're living in Missouri now. And we play D&D with them. Because he said, okay, I'll take up your challenge. I'll play one time to see what it's like. I said, after playing, if you think it's evil, you let me know. So we played, just the 4 of us. My wife was the DM, and all he wanted to do was play again. And I looked at him. I said, do you still think this game is evil? And he says, no. He says, what the? He was shocked. he all he wanted to do was play again. He goes, can we play this again? He just wanted to keep going. It was so much fun. He actually got into a bar fight in a town. The character that was in the module that my wife was using was good at two-fisted fighting and had a little system for it, and he took up the guy's challenge. He's like, oh, I can take this guy, and the guy beat him. It was really funny, and he was so mad that this guy beat him up in a bar, and it's like, oh my god, that's not our typical D&D game, but it was great, and he loved it. He just, all he wanted to do was play after thinking for years that this is a satanic evil game. So I'm sharing that too. Hopefully you all enjoyed it, and I'll see if what I'll do next. I have no idea, but I hope you all enjoyed this. Talk to you all later. Bye bye.